That can call us.
Okay, I see the recording. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to begin by taking roll call.
Join the meeting.
And hope everyone also enjoys their Saturday after today's meeting. So Matt Hall,
Here.
Rebecca Aguilar,
Here.
Lauren Burlett.
Here.
Uh, Let me pass on the other one. Rafael Olmeda,
Here.
Claire Regan,
Here.
Bailey Shaw.
Here.
And then I know we were not having Jerry and Yvette Walker who would not be present. All right, Matt and John, you can take it away.
Great. Yeah, we'll start with public comment before we power through today's meeting, which is singularly focused on our strategic plan. We thought that 6 months into the year was a good time to assess how we're all doing. But before we start, as Yvette suggested, I just want to say that Jerry and Yvette Walker, Jerry McCormick and Yvette Walker are not here. They're focused on family today. And I just want to keep them in your hearts today, if you could, you guys. And with that, let's go to public comment. Anyone joining us have anything to say, particularly on anything not on the agenda before we get to the strategic plan? Just raise a hand or unmute yourself. And if there aren't any, let's get to the main event. So we're here today to talk. I'll just tee it up and then pass the mic to John. We have a really good presentation and a really good discussion set for today. The strategic plan that we all know and that two boards have unanimously passed and supported in the last 6 months is pretty exciting, pretty ambitious, especially for a one-page document. It's deceiving in its simplicity. And we've made a lot of progress this year, as you'll hear. We still have a lot to do and a lot of efforts underway for both the next 6 months and for coming years and coming boards. This is kind of the foundational year for this, but is by no means the only year. As you're going to hear, we have a lot of initiatives underway, starting with two of my big priorities, diversity and campus life. The diversity committee has a really cool new initiative on top of all the other stuff that it is doing, as Rebecca, I'm not going to steal her thunder, as Rebecca will explain to you later. Campus life, there's a lot going on with our campus structures. We have Beiling and Jerry are on a task force with many other motivated SPJers to make it easier to start a campus chapter and to actually start 10 campus chapters. And our goal at the beginning of the year was to focus on HBCUs and Hispanic serving institutions. And I am really proud to tell those who don't know that we have expanded that to also focus on campuses with high concentrations of Asian Americans and on tribal schools. So we're going to make it not only easier to start a campus chapter, a lot easier, but are really actually going to do that as well. We also have a student trustee council, which is newly created, which will help us guide our efforts in campus life. 9 members, pretty diverse group from all over the country. That will be meeting soon. And just really quickly, before we get into the specifics, I want to hit a few of the highlights. The database issue that we all know and have bemoaned for years is really on its way. And I'm proud to report that having renewed my membership recently makes it not only easier to do so, but is asking for information that I've long wanted and that board members have long wanted, such as pronouns that will show that we are a welcoming organization, such as race and ethnicity, which will allow us to know that we're serving our membership by reflecting it. And so that is a big issue that we're working on, as you'll hear. Ethics is a huge component of what we're doing this year. We obviously got a grant from Craig Newmark. Rod Hicks has been or is kind of refocusing his efforts on ethics and diversity. And I'm really excited about what he will do for us and with us in coming years. And I guess just, lastly, I want to say this is a time and a year for us all to stick together as journalists, not just as SPJers, but with other journalism organizations.
And Audie.
It's been
Join the meeting.
really hard week for AAJA and our AAPI journalists in particular. So I want to thank everyone on this board and in our organization and in the country for supporting those journalists this week, and keep doing that every week. And with that, I'll pass the mic to John to get into the details of all the amazing things we have underway and will yet do. Take it away, John.
Great, thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon or morning, wherever you're watching this from. I'm going to share my screen now and bring up what I hope is a slideshow. And hold on, one more thing I need to do. Okay. Should hopefully be seeing now our logo with SPJ strategic plan. Can somebody give me a thumbs up or hello? All right, good. So when Matt called this meeting last month, he felt that it was important that we take some time to go over sort of the strategic plan again, where we're at with that, what our progress has been thus far. And I think it was a really wise choice because too many times in board discussions, we do get focused on decisions of the moment, and and that's important too, but then it's hard to draw back and take the broader view. And so that's what I hope to do today is we're going to zoom out at times and we're going to zoom in at times and kind of cover the strategic plan as approved last year, and then the annual plan that accompanies that was approved late in 2020 as well. So, and I think, my belief is you're going to really be excited about the things you're hearing. I think it's going to be a fun, holistic discussion around SPJ present and future. And, at any point along the way, raise hands, ask questions, and board members especially be prepared to discuss as things go along. So starting with just the first thing to cover is a reminder of what we approved as our core 4 pillars for the organization. And we also, I'll just call it out here, if you get your newest Quill magazine, we've got those 4 elements on the cover as well. And then the articles inside are attached to one of the core 4 pillars. So it's a good creative decision on Lou Harry's part to focus on that, and it kind of helps to bring it home. And then later, I'll kind of share with you how we're doing that with the website. But these are the 4 identifying statements. This is what we are aspiring SPJ to be identified as and to be working towards. And so in a sense, the things that we decide to do as an organization ought to move in the direction of these 4 identifying statements, being we are champions for journalists, we are fighters for the First Amendment, we are stewards for ethical journalism, and we are producers of journalism's future. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about how each of these became goals, or there's goals underneath each of these that were part of our annual plan, and kind of talk through how we got there. But a couple of overview statements that I want to throw in there first. First is to keep in mind what our SPJ structure and function currently is, so that you can understand how we're implementing the strategic plan. So we have layers, of course, like any organization, of groups working towards furthering and bettering SPJ. And I'm going to walk through those real quick and then tie into how they connect with the implementation of the strategic plan. The first is obviously the board. You all as the board, you govern the organization and you have fiduciary responsibility for the organization. So you're protectors of the overall organization, as well as you set vision and strategy from a high level as far as where the organization is going. Committees are an extension of the board in that they perform persistent work in support of the organization's goals and strategies. In SPJ, we have generally 2 kinds of committees. We have what I would call standing committees that are identified in bylaws that almost every organization, not-for-profit, has. Those are things like our finance committee, resolutions, bylaws, things like that are carry out a real particular function, but are persistent. And every year we need those. But then we also have strategic committees. Those would be committees like our diversity and membership and journalism education committees. Those are ones that we as an organization at some point along the way said, this is an important enough endeavor that we need a team of folks working on it every year consistently. So while the members of these committees may change, these are committees that we keep in perpetuity at this point. Now, those strategic ones can change. We can add, say, a different committee that we think could cover this topic and take away another, so on and so forth. That's up to the board to determine it as we move forward. And then the third sort of area that we need to consider is task forces. These act like committees, but they are focused and they perform episodic work. So they are a very short period of time with a particular goal. And when they meet the goal, it's dissolved. So they're just there to achieve a particular plan or goal or outcome. Sometimes we call committees in our task forces committees in our organization, just by vocabulary and all that, but they really operate as task forces. For example, the program selection committee for convention really is a task force because they have a very defined goal and they achieve that goal over a period of time and then they're done. And then next year we kind of start it over again. The campus life task force we'll hear from later is a task force that has been given an assignment. So that just so you kind of understand, obviously, the differences between those things. Now, these three entities play a lot in terms of implementation of the strategic plan. So they are really designed to implement the overarching goals and strategies of the organization. Now, we also have obviously other layers in our structure. We have regions, chapters, and communities. Regions performing services, resources, and connection to a particular geographic footprint. Chapters providing services and resources to members in a city, state, campus, town, or otherwise similar geographic community who are also key then for member recruitment as well. So chapters really help drive people finding and engaging in SPJ. And then we have communities that are loosely structured affinity groups for members with a specific professional interest. So, and loosely structured being key there. In our history, communities have really been sort of have been able to define how they carry out their work sort of on their own, whatever meets the needs of the group. These three entities are not, they may touch the strategic goals at some point. They may help further them along by giving feedback, by engaging in them in certain ways. But in a sense, they are more operate to provide an experience for the members, to support and serve the members and what they want to get out of the SPJ and make it an exceptional experience for a member. So while they may sometimes engage in strategy, they're oftentimes the recipients of strategic decisions from those other entities, meaning that they help drive forward some of the goals and outcomes that are developed in other places. And then the last layer that I'll define today is we have staff, obviously. SPJ is lucky to have a paid professional staff that is of good size that can really carry out all these administrative and professional functions that execute on the priorities and goals of the organization. Not every not-for-profit has a staff. They're often sometimes all volunteer driven. And while that works, if you've been a part of a group like that, and I have, you find that it can get chaotic at times because it's nice to have the glue of a staff team that is daily paying attention to these things and carrying out the work. I colored the staff as purple in this diagram because we as staff often are involved in strategic work and decision making and also member services. So we kind of cover both territories. We bridge both of those areas. So as you think about today, as we go through today in the presentation, we've empowered some of our committees to give updates. We've empowered some of our staff to give updates. We as a board will then provide feedback and suggestions and thoughts as we go along. But it really does take a team to carry out a strategic plan. And the team is all of these things you see on the screen. And so it's exciting in a sense, but it also means that there's a lot of coordination. There's a lot of things happening. Can be overlap at times, and that's something we have to really pay attention to so that we're actually working very efficiently towards the objectives that we're trying to achieve. So I leave that with you as something that we may return to as we go through our conversation today. I do want to point out that staff, what you're hearing a lot today will be what staff and committees are doing, and I just want to point out that strategic goals and priorities and those found in our annual plan are fantastic and obviously things we need to focus on, but there's also regular staff activity we won't necessarily discuss today. So while staff is deployed to help carry out the strategic goals of the organization, we also have regular daily activity or annual activity that is just persistent because we're a membership association, and it's not going to necessarily be delineated in a strategic plan or on the big goals sheet we set every year. And those are some of the things that you see here on the screen, such as planning for our conference, magazine production, website development, appeals for fundraising, Google and Facebook trainings. We have external clients we manage, so on and so forth. So when you talk today and I say that we're in the progress of building out a goal, it might be just because it needs to be pushed to later in the year to accommodate some of these other regular staff activities that we have to achieve. And so there's a competition that we play in terms of everyday work that furthers the organization, and then the strategic work that we need to carry out as well. I've invited all of our staff members to be here today so that they can be a part and feel as part of a team as we carry this out. A few weren't able to make it, but most are here. And so I hope that, as you hear some of them talk today, and as we open up the floor for conversation or whatever, they're as welcome to share feedback and ideas as anyone. Before we launch into then the showcase of some of these strategies and what we're trying to achieve, I do want to I've asked Matt for this, a little grace to kind of give a little bit of a public shout out and embarrass a couple of people, because we've invited all the staff here to be with us and they're here alongside you. And that is, in this first quarter of 2021, we had a couple of significant staff anniversaries. Most of the staff is 5 years or younger as far as being on this team. And that's a vast majority. And, I'm only been here just over a year. But thankfully, we've been sort of anchored with the wisdom of a few staff members who have sort of stuck with it, you could say, over a decade. And in particular, we have 2 staff members who reached the 15-year milestone of service for SPJ. And that would be Billy O'Keefe, who is our longest serving staff member by about a month, and Linda Hall. And both of these folks perform exceptional work. They've been stalwarts of the organization. You know them all very well. You know how important they are to the staff and to SPJ. So I just wanted to call them out today. And if we could give a virtual show of appreciation and thanks and a round of applause, I'm sure they'd appreciate it, and I would as well. So thank you to Billy and Linda, who are here. And you'll hear from Billy later on for sure. But, Linda's definitely free to talk, and she never holds back anyway. So I'm looking forward to that likely happening. So thank you both, and just want to make sure we acknowledge that. All right, now as we move in to the actual sharing of where we stand, I wanted to draw an analogy that we can keep coming back to. I'm coming to you from Indianapolis, where our office is. Our big event every year is the Indy 500. It is, I think this year they're going to still try to pull it off, although it might not be a crowd. The Indy 500 is an analogy I'm going to draw here, is that when you're preparing to race in the Indy 500, you have generally 3 steps, I guess you could say. Is that first you have to build a car, and so you're in your building stage, and then you got to put the car on the track and start racing it around, and then you actually get to cross the finish line and see the checkered flag. The goals that we're going to go over today are in 3, I'm going to label them in 3 categories. 1, we're still building the car. So it means that we're still assembling. And that may mean that we don't see any tangible progress yet, but it doesn't mean it's out of sight. It means we're trying and getting things organized. And many of our goals will be on track, meaning we're moving, and it is getting closer and closer to the finish line. We may not be there, but we're getting close. And in a few circumstances, we have reached the checkered flag or are very close. And so as I go through the goals today, you'll see me use language as building, on track, or finished. And that just is a way to try to share with you where we are March 2021, about 4 months since we approved the annual plan to fulfill our strategic plan. So, I leave you with that analogy to use. At this point, we're going to turn into our first, well, maybe I should stop for just a few minutes if there's any questions or additional feedback on any of that I shared. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute. And for me to take a sip of coffee. All right, moving forward, the way we've laid out the agenda, We're going to go through each of the pillars: champions for journalists, fighters for the First Amendment, stewards of ethical journalism, and producers of journalism's future. And in each of those categories, there's a few places for particular updates. I don't see Mr. Schatz has appeared yet. I know he had to drop over from another meeting he's a part of. So we will have Andy and Lou Harry sort of give us an update on awards, but let's wait a second for Andy to get here. And instead, why don't we turn to do an education update? So our education that we do as an organization, we sort of place underneath this Champions for Journalists banner, because we feel like it is showing our care and concern for journalists, that we put forward educational opportunities for them. So I am going to turn it over to Karen for that report. And then I will share some slides that she has provided for this as well.
Great.
All right. And just tell me when you want me to advance, Karen.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. In my role, I'm going to cover a few things that we've been working on hot and heavy in the last few months. First of all, the convention programming. In my role, I'm really fortunate to be the staff co-pilot to Rebecca and supporting the work of this committee. The team really represents a diverse set of perspectives. We have current board members, we have past committee members, we have chapter leaders, we have journalism educators, working journalists, freelancers, and young emerging leaders as well. So they have been really busy. We have received 56 submissions online, including 9 super sessions, 3 deep dives, and 1 micro session. And the committee added 12 proposals. So at this point, they reviewed what was already in the hopper and was starting to identify some gaps and some additional exciting programs. So they are in the process of reviewing all of those programs. Convention, as you probably know, is going to be held September 2nd through the 4th. And right now, we have a lot of really great submissions for super sessions, and we're going to hold on that just a little bit to make sure that we have time for just-in-time programming and for fellow spotlights and such. Team is meeting and or doing some of that background work on their own, and then our next meeting is going to be on March 30th. Next up is working really hard to try and restore the annual training program of SPJ. One of those pieces is going to be a new program. It's the Student Leadership Institute. We're starting the acronym SLI. So if you start to hear that, that's what it's connected to. This particular program is funded by the Scripps Howard Foundation. And the focus of the education and the content is going to be college students. So looking at rising leaders to be future leaders within the industry, within their workplaces, as well as in SPJ. The focus of the skills that they're going to be building is self-awareness, emotional intelligence and empathy building, leading with values and connecting that to the SPJ code of conduct or code of ethics, conflict management, and teamwork. There's going to be several pieces to this experience. The Institute itself will be held in Indianapolis, July 16th through the 18th, a weekend program starting on a Friday afternoon and going through a Sunday morning. It's going to be very hands-on and experiential. So the participants will both get information, and then they're going to be talking in small groups and pairs and getting coached by 2 to 3 young professionals within SPJ to help them learn the content, but then also apply that information in their future workplaces as well as in SPJ. So not only are they gaining some really great personal and professional development experiences, we want to make it really practical as well. So we want them to be contributing members to the entire industry. Not only will this experience be 3 days in Indianapolis, there are going to be several components after the program. So if we could go to the next click, great. Planning on having some sort of convention experience because there are so many people that we want and need for these young professionals and young students to meet. So there's going to be some virtual and actual and live coaching with early career SPJ professionals, do some follow-up skills training with 2 of the partner organizations with SPJ, continued cohort communication, so building that team of 20 people and then making that a really sticky experience. So they want to stay in SPJ, not just for their undergraduate career, but for the next several decades of their lives. So that, in summary, is a quick view of the Student Leadership Institute that will happen starting in Indianapolis. The next piece is kind of a fan favorite. I understand that the script had once supported this type of programming for future SPJ leaders. And so we're going to make sure that we discern the SLI, which is the Student Leadership Institute, and the Future Leaders Academy. The Future Leaders Academy is going to be for current and existing SPJ leaders who want to rise within the organization. Perhaps they want to serve on a task force. Perhaps they want to write some articles. Maybe they want to be a leader within the community that they're a part in. Maybe they aspire to be a future board member. So we want to build their competence with really great information. We want to build their confidence and connectivity, connect them to really great people within SPJ to make sure that they're mentored and that that they use those skills to further and strengthen both the SPJ organization as a whole and to also consider SPJ Foundation leadership. Right now, the content is being developed for that particular program. It's open to everyone. So do not equate future leaders with young leaders. It's anyone who wants to rise within the organization. And to create that cohort of learning and connectedness, it will be limited to 20 participants. The intentions or the learning outcomes are on the right side of that PowerPoint. We want to build their connections, build their self-awareness so they understand what their current strengths are, as well as areas that they want to build on. Develop some creative thinking skills because they will be the ones who are shaping and also executing on some of our future strategies. So we want some good creative thinking and constructive thinking from those individuals. And again, we want to build a cohort of peers for them to lean on to and also to support and contribute to the organization. The final piece is I also get to, in my role, support the work of the Journalism Education Committee. And Yvette has led 2 meetings so far. There's going to be more coming in March. And then I think we're going to start meeting every other month, just starting to churn the information and get people rolling. The first is filling out and completing or adding to the minority serving institutions list. So we have really great contacts within those institutions for any future SPJ communications. The team has submitted 1 program proposal for convention, and it's going to be on data journalism that is proposed to be led by both educators as well as college students in a show and tell format. The team has also been talking a lot about mentorship because there's a lot of value in that one-on-one kind of wise sage to future professionals. But this team thought it would be more effective if we can do a newsroom to newsroom mentorship, starting with just 2 newsrooms, experimenting with that, working out some of the kinks, and then broadening it to more. Trying to make it really manageable. So we structure at least 4 meetings, newsroom to newsroom, get some good lessons learned, and then build the program from that point. The team has also been working on getting information on developing some processes and procedures for the committee to follow in terms of journalism education advocacy. And the last 2 pieces, press for education and media literacy, kind of go hand in hand. We want to increase the number of educators who are using those really great resources, and then also build the skills for educators and their students. That's a quick review of the education pieces.
Thank you, Karen. There might be some questions or comments on this. We're going to pause on that for just a moment because Andy is here and I know he's got a limited amount of time. So we are going to now pivot to another big portion of the Champions for Journalists pillar, which is awards. Our awards program, we sort of identify within that area of work simply because it is a way to celebrate the great work of journalists. So I've asked Andy and Lou to kind of give us an awards update, just to kind of give you a sense of how we did and are doing in that category. So I'll let either of them kind of start us off with some thoughts. So
Should we rock, scissors, paper to see who's going to go first, Andy?
I'm just gonna call it right now.
Go for it.
I'll let you fill in because you are on the ground and you can say much more than I can. But just as an overview, our awards have been a big component of celebrating journalism. We have the Sigma Delta Chi Awards, we have the Mark of Excellence Awards, we have the New America Award. We also have awards celebrating journalists at the local level. Many chapters are doing this, and it's actually one of the most important things that they do all year. I'm involved at the local level as well. We have a cooperative where we now have about 25 different chapters that get together and coordinate judging. We do a swap, and it's invaluable. Old timers might remember that the process used to be at the national convention. Somebody would put a file card on a board and hope that somebody saw it and called them, and they were the judging swap. We are now into the 21st century where we can coordinate people. We brought in outside groups too. Some press clubs are involved, but it works really well. And I think we can actually go farther. But at the national level, the awards were challenging this year because we had a new person doing it. There's a lot to it. I'm sure that Lou has figured out how much work and coordination goes into it, and Lou's done really well. The awards were also challenging because of COVID. We had to try to figure out what would work this year. And one thing that we came up with was an accommodation to try to recognize COVID work unto itself. So much of what newsrooms did this year was COVID. We also had the challenge of looking at racial justice as an issue, which really dominated on its own. If there were no COVID in the last year, that could have been a very dominant topic. And we decided to try to recognize both of those things by pulling out separate categories for COVID, both in Mark of Excellence and in SDX, and for looking at not just best coverage of protests, but looking at inequalities in society. We thought that that was a way to be broad, consider a lot of different circumstances. I mean, there are racial issues, there are ethnic issues, there are gender issues all the time. So those are combined into a new kind of super category this year for SDX. And I think that they were all, Lou can get into this a little bit more, but they were all well received and entered. I have not pressed Lou for hard data on where we stand. Well, we're still in the middle of a award season, trying not to have him deviate too much from what the work that he needs to do. But I do remember that we were up in numbers for SDX, if I remember correctly. I don't remember for MOE, but I think we did well. New America is a little hard to gauge because it's a much smaller universe. The numbers never really have a trend. They can go high one year, low the next year, and bounce right back up. It's a little bit more chance. So let's see, we're in the midst of SDX judging season. It's just kicking off now. I appreciate everybody from the board who has volunteered to help. I know some people have taken on not just one category, but multiple categories. Thank you very much for that. It's a service toward the core mission of celebrating journalism. MOE judging is complete at the local level, and then it goes on to regional, state, national judging. And after that, we have judging for the overall best in show. We call the MOE, and that started about 3-4 years ago. Also for celebrating, we are in the midst of some of the awards, the other awards that SPJ holds. The fellows nominations have come in. It's the Awards and Honors Committee that will be reviewing that. That's a change in the policies from a few years ago when everything was centered around the executive committee. There is no executive committee anymore, so we came up with new procedures, and the awards committee took on fellows. It is taking on historic sites, which I know we have multiple nominations for that, which is unusual. That's good. And I think we have one more. What else is awards? There's a third thing. I don't know, I'm blanking, but I know that I'm also part of the ethics committee, and we are taking on that process as well. That's going to be underway over the next few weeks. What else to say? Some new categories this year. Video game journalism was a new venture for us. Podcasting we started a few years ago. 360 video we started a few years ago. Fact checking we started a few years ago. So I think we're not just keeping strong programs, but we're also thinking about ways to thank you, the Dubin Awards. That's the third one. We're also thinking about new areas to have awards that we can recognize. And I know that Lou has at least one for the off season, but we're going to be talking, kind of a top to bottom review, both in the rules, the categories. We sometimes add, we sometimes subtract. But just thinking about philosophy of how to choose areas for awards. So that's about all I have for now. I'm happy to answer questions, but I'll hand it over to Lou.
Great. I'll fill in a few blanks around all that terrific report. In terms of specific numbers, both SDX and MOE were up over the previous year. There was a lot of concern, particularly with Mark of Excellence, because students aren't congregated in the same way that they were in the past, and there was a real concern that those numbers wouldn't hit because the students weren't around the journalism department as much physically. But they were all up. We had about 1,245 SDX entries and 3,153 MOE entries, both notched up from previous years. Expanded categories, they're over, including some categories end up being combined depending on how many entries there are. Our rule of thumb is if there are 4 or less, we combine categories when it comes to different sizes of regions, under top 50 markets, that sort of thing. We ended up with over 80 SDX categories, over 65 MOE categories. That meant expanding the judging pool as well, and a lot of the work has been outreach to judges. If you're not familiar, SDX also requires assistant judges, so it's been a matter of lining up those as well. Andy mentioned the expanded categories. There have been responses to those. The other awards, Friday was just the deadline for a batch of them, including Historic Sites, Sunshine Award, Ethics, and Distinguished Teacher Awards. So all of those will be channeled to the proper judging areas. We've had, Sue and Andy have been terrific support and partners in all of this, and I wanted to give a shout out to that committee. Because of me being new in this position, there have been a lot of questions along the way. In the same way, I get a lot of questions from judges and from entrants, and my philosophy is I like to get back to people within an hour if possible, but no longer than 24 hours from a question coming in from a judge or an entrant. That's our clientele. The judges are people who care a lot about what's going on with SPJ, and I want them to be satisfied with the experience of judging. I want the entrants to be satisfied and know that we're paying attention and helping them out in any way possible. On the back end of that, I also want to mention that Linda Hall and Ashlyn in the office have been assisting in all of this. They're going to be take a lot of the responsibility of getting certificates out and plaques out and all the sort of hardware process of this, which is also very important. And I appreciate the work that they're doing. That's pretty much all of it. It has been an adventure, and I look forward to what vaguely resembles downtime after this cycle is done, that we can go through and clean things up. Also assisting along the way has been Billy in tech, helping out with a lot of the tech questions. So very much appreciate that.
Thanks,
Questions
Lou.
welcome.
Matt, I don't know how you want to handle this. I have more to go over with Champions of Journalists, but we can stop here and let questions be asked of the reports, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's a good idea, especially because Andy has to check out shortly. So why don't we kind of take questions on this component now? Just unmute yourself or raise a hand if anyone does have questions. That was a pretty thorough report, and I appreciate the expansiveness and the
Well, I
detail.
do want to mention that, I meant to mention, if you have ideas for categories that you think would get a strong response, or either a strong response or are important that we represent, ideally a combination of both. But if it's any of those categories, by all means, send them to me or to Andy or the committee, or to just the awards email address, and we'll put them on the list to discuss and consider. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any questions for awards. Were there any? Thank you, Andy and Lou, for that update. And just a reminder to the board that may not be necessary, but when our awards go up, it does impact our bottom line, and it's good when that happens, because it helps our budget as well. It's not the reason we do awards per se, but it's helpful for sure. Now, any questions back to Karen? Sorry, kind of jogging all over the place. If there were any specific questions for Karen, maybe for a few minutes on what she shared from education. Rebecca?
Yes. Thank you, Karen, for that presentation, and Andy and Lou, you too. I had some questions about the Student Leadership Institute. Who will choose those students? And how many times will this institute happen per year? Is it once a year, twice a year?
Yes.
And also the same thing for Future Leader Academy, the same questions for that. Who will choose these individuals? And how many times will this program go off every year?
Great.
Thank
Both programs are just once a year. And so for the Student Leadership Institute, looking to have 2 journalism education volunteers to serve on a very small committee, as well as Bits and Dope Bats with the Scripps Howard Foundation. And then for the Future Leaders Academy, I think that's only going to be done once a year as well. And then the selection committee in the past has been a team of staff members. And the focus for the Future Leaders Academy really is quite internal, in giving them a good review of SPJ and all the contribution opportunities that they have.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Karen. I also have a question about the Future Leaders Academy. Wanted to know to what extent you're going to be involving current and former leaders, because in the past, they were a huge part of those training sessions.
Yeah. Well, I always think 20 brains are better than 1, and the more the merrier. Part of the intention too is to have some really good mentoring experiences for these participants. And a lot of my experience working with some mentoring programs, one-on-one is really tough, because this is a busy, busy community. So I'm going to look at both individual as well as some group coaching opportunities, and have those very structured with specific dates. And also definitely going to be leaning on volunteers and staff to really share the menu of opportunities for people to get involved and to contribute. Part of it will be on skill building and knowledge building, but definitely wanting, again, this to be a sticky experience. So they do want to contribute those skills right back to SPJ.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I just had a quick question too. I saw that Indianapolis in July is your target date. How is that being, how is the pandemic factoring into that decision?
Great. Working with the Jameson camp, so it's an outdoor camp. The space that we have for 20 participants and probably 4 faculty members fits 180 people. They're very experienced at the social distancing, and we're going to follow Indiana law in Marion County, as well as, since it is at a campground, we're going to try and do as much as we can outside. And the overnight accommodations are cabins. So we have doubled up on the number of cabins to make sure that there's plenty of space between all of our participants. They also have additional protocols in place just for their property.
Thank you. And as
Sure.
some of you may have seen yesterday, the CDC guidance on classrooms is now 3 feet as opposed to 6 feet. So things are opening up. Just, I see Bailing has her hand up. I just want to say personally, I appreciate both of these efforts. The student leaders and society leaders are two of the most important things we can do as an organization. And I really appreciate us getting that back and operational this year.
Hi, Bailing.
Hi, thank you so much for your report, Karen. It might be premature to ask a question about the program content, but I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to that. And in particular, I'm interested in knowing what kind of leadership education would be provided around leading diverse teams. I think a lot of the traditional approaches to leadership are very grounded in literature that has a specific traditional focus in terms of what constitutes leadership and how leadership is perceived. And the newer literature has a lot of gender dimensions, race and ethnicity dimensions. And so I was wondering what the plans were for incorporating that to be really building future leaders.
Absolutely. I think this is probably one of my favorite areas of leadership development because not only is it personal development, it's professional development. So to your point, spot on with growing the emotional intelligence and empathy building and understanding diverse perspectives. So part of that is understanding ourselves and then understanding and appreciating other people. Not only will we do that in understanding leadership styles and leadership behaviors, but also just all of the layers of perspective that we have with our varying social identities. So that's going to be a strong part of that because we want to continue to build toward the future and build in the present. So yes.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, I'm gonna do a quick reshare here. Hold on one second to. So want to walk through as briefly as possible so if you're in your documents in the board folder, you saw that we have the overarching 4 pillars, and within those are some concrete sort of objectives to help make the pillars make sense. But then attached to all this is our annual plan. So the board approved an annual plan in November, late November, that was said like these are the goals we want to try to achieve in the next year, 2021. So I'm going to walk through these real quickly and kind of share with you where we stand on some of these so you can get an update on that. And then any feedback you have can be helpful as well. So under Champions for Journalists, in addition to the great things you just heard, we said that we wanted to develop initiatives to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion goals of the news industry. I'm going to put that as an on-track goal in that staff had a retreat earlier in the year in which we tried to unpack what that looks like, what that could mean, because it's pretty broad. And one of the things that we realized is that before we want to go promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in the news industry, amongst journalists and anywhere else, we needed to do the work in our own organization. We needed to do the work in our own building, in our own staff team. So I've been seeking proposals for DEI education, training, and consulting for the staff to go through and further our knowledge and understanding of these important issues. And then what could come from that would be as if we feel it's an effective way to do it, we could take it out to more of the volunteer structure as well and have it more permeate the organization. In addition, some of the consultants will review our policies for inclusivity and things like that will help further the organization along. So while there might be a lot more to come out of this one goal at the very top here, we think that's a good place to start. And we hope to get that started as soon as possible once we get some proposals sorted through. So that's on that issue where we want to try to work on that. I'll walk through these and then we can go back to any questions. The second one you just heard about, so we are restoring the annual training program for SPJ leaders. Third, we wanted to assess SPJ's volunteer structure with an aim of restarting membership growth. That's a buildings phase. We're still building the car there to kind of understand what we mean in doing that. I think the goal here is to ensure that our structure, some of the things I shared with you earlier in the meeting, is the right kind of structure to further our goals as an organization, and how does it impact membership growth and recruiting and bringing in new members. But we don't have any further goals along that line at this, or any progress along that line at this point. Number 4, we said we want to identify and launch 3 new communities. This would be a big thing for the organization. So this communities meaning like the international community and freelancer community that we already have, and they're working very actively and are very strong components of SPJ. We are looking to seed and see if we can establish 3 more that would be as effective and work as well. So where we are there is we had a focus group with current community leaders to kind of determine what do we think makes a good community, what are the ingredients, so we could try to replicate that. And we've come out with what we think would be 5 or 6 potential communities, and we now just need to dig a little deeper to figure out which one of those maybe we really feel like could be successful. So I just shared with Matt on Thursday a document that outlined all of that thinking, as well as a few of those community options. Matt, did you want me to go any further than that today on this, or where do you think we go on that? Because that could be a big discussion whenever it happens.
Yeah, that we should probably move that to a separate board discussion. If you want to just show it quickly, so everyone is kind of up to speed on what the small group talked about, you can. But it's probably smart to stick to a 30,000 foot level at this point, because it's early stages in that effort.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And so I don't have it called up to share. I can actually send it out to the board after as
That's a
well.
good
So you
idea.
can see that. So essentially, I mean, just as a preview, you know, maybe a community focused on campus life and for our campus components, maybe a community focused on new technology, so that those who love gadgets and gizmos and new tech and journalism have a home base to go share that love with each other. Or maybe a community on First Amendment free press issues, because we have a lot of people that's their reason for being an SPJ. They are just driven by that. And so could a community that is a home base for those people to congregate and chat with each other about those issues and surface issues. So it's things like that. So we'll be able to, the goal is by the end of the year to get there. So we still got time, but we're making some progress. These membership goals, I'm going to punt. That's why I'm highlighting them, punt them to later in the meeting, because the membership committee will be talking later. And so I'll bring these back up later. So we're going to pass over those for right now. Number 6 on this list was to create a JSTOR for a merchandise revenue stream, to start creating products that not only our members, but the general journalism community would like. That's in a building phase. Tony, our creative director, and I have been studying different vendors that we could use to make that happen. We just are working out that as the investigation still. Explore the production of a podcast that highlights compelling journalism, still building that. One of the community ideas would be a community of podcasters, so people who really love that medium, and that could help us drive this goal forward. But for whatever it's worth, we are going to investigate this further and try to get this established within the next 6 months or so to try to move that forward. And then develop a training agenda targeting young journalists focused on new tech skills. We're building that, but again, one of the communities that we've talked about could help us there if we've talked about a new tech community that could be the drivers of what we discussed in that vein, and where we should focus and how we should provide some of that. Getting back to the communities, if you do the communities right, they help provide a lot of the education for the organization. If you think what the international community has been doing, weekly webinars, so on and so forth. The freelance community has been fantastic about providing information and resources to their members. So where we get stuck on how do we do a goal, it could be that a community helps get us there. So anyway, we're still planning out that one as well. So I'll stop here for questions before we then move into our next pillar, which is fighters for the First Amendment.
I have a question. I've gotten this question from many of our members for new members who join, or if we do the initiative that Matt has, bring one on. Are there any other incentives or a incentive that we can give to them maybe something that, given to them for free. I don't know, any one of our past publications or something that we can offer to new members, because that's something that's been mentioned in the past. What incentive can we give them besides, them joining, or if we bring them on?
Great. I think it's a great question. Let's, if we can hold that to when the membership committee and Emily share some of their thoughts later in the meeting. We kind of had to break that apart, unfortunately, because there's some membership stuff in the producers category as well that we're going to talk later. But I think that all gets down to an onboarding for new members, and I think that's a great question and something we ought to consider doing for sure. Any other questions or thoughts around these, and anything else you want to identify or surface before we move forward to the next category?
John, can I jump in?
Yes, please.
I really like the JSTOR merchandise revenue stream. I think that's a great idea. I also strongly suggest, just because it just seems like, women stick together, that, if we could maybe have some merchandise with quotes from, different well-known female, any journalists really, but, I tend to, buy coffee cups with women, right? And, a quote from a woman journalist or something like that. I think, that would be something that I would love to give to my mentees, because everybody drinks coffee or whatever, but, I hope that, you'll take suggestions from the members, because I think that's a great idea. And, people tend to buy things. I think I'm not sure, someone suggested, masks with the SPJ logo, which would be great. We're a walking billboard, basically. So anyway, thank you for that idea. I think it's wonderful.
Great ideas. Thank you. Okay. So since this is the first one we've gone through, so if you look at this list here, the goal is that by the end of 2021, we'll have checked these off, or at least to a place of, we can't take them any further in this current year. And so that's a lot to accomplish. If we do all these things in 2021, it's going to be a heck of a year, but that's why we set these goals, right? So that we can be ambitious and really try to move the organization forward. But so that's the first pillar, Champions for Journalists, awards, education, and then all these various things. And it's been a pretty exciting venture. It's one of our meatier categories, you could say. Okay. Moving forward to the next. So Haston Willis is our FOI committee chair, and Haston had to email me this morning, and I just saw it about, he is out of town and thought he could still log into the meeting, but he's not going to be able to do that. So he submitted a full written report to the activities of the first FOI committee. So let's talk through a little bit of what they've been up to. Is there anyone else, I guess I should ask anyone else on this call who's a member of that committee who could pinch hit and would be willing to kind of give an update on what they're doing? All right, hearing none. Very quickly, the very biggest thing that they've been, Mike Savino. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, sorry.
Can you
Hey,
jump in here and give us a little update?
yeah, I mean, obviously Haston knows more, but we just had our Sunshine Week project go up, which this year focused on algorithmic transparency. We had a really good forum on Thursday, just laying out the importance of this topic and not just educating journalists on the issue and how to cover it, how to go about, educating the public on government use of algorithms, but really also explaining how this is going to be a huge focus going forward with transparency, because more and more government is focusing on the use of algorithms. So that's been a huge focus for the committee this year, is getting that project going. There's a great tool up now on the website, so I certainly recommend everyone check it out. And then of course also the Black Hole Award. We just took care of that. So I don't know, did we announce the Black Hole Award winner, John?
Yes, with the press release out on Monday. Yep.
The Attorney General in Louisiana was the runaway winner in a pretty competitive field. So I'm sure that was in the report as well. Those are the two things that I can think of off the top of my head. I don't know, John, if there's anything else in there.
Now that's so in what he sent to me, which I'll forward on to the board, and we'll put it into the board material so anyone on the call here will be able to see that. He mentioned some of those very same important things, and I want to make sure everyone I put into the chat. Matt did too, I think, about the algorithms thing. The FOI committee, along with Billy, our web designer, did a fantastic online resource on that. That is very cool to look at. And so take some time when you get a chance to look at that. But that's the kind of products that, you know, our committees are capable of helping us design and deliver on. And when they work with staff, it make it even better. So great job on that. The only other thing that he mentioned in his report are really connected to the things I was going to share anyway about this category. So I'm going to bring up my screen again. Okay, so these are the 4 goals for Fighters for the First Amendment that were input into the annual plan, and they connect somewhat with what the FOI committee has been working on, and then some are you know, kind of separate of that. But the first one was to create a First Amendment focus on our website as part of a larger website redesign based on our strategic plan pillars. That is on track and near completion. And later on, to sort of summarize everything we'll talk about today, I'm going to show some of that website to you. But that's really in a good spot. But the idea there was that we want to make sure we're leading with mission, that our website, basically the first thing you do when you see our website is what we stand for and what our mission is. And so that's one of the reasons we went to that direction. We want to launch a webinar series on First Amendment issues journalists are facing. We're still in the building stage of that. That's something we probably will work with the FOI committee to help establish. But that's an area where we feel like we can use webinars to help drive education and resources. We want to support the development of the SPJ Press for the First program, and that's really on track. So the Press for the First program, and that'll be in the report you'll see from Haston, it's basically lobbying training or advocacy training that happens either in DC or in state houses, where we train and educate journalists on how to do that. It's a program that has a prior history, and we have done it as part of conventions or as part of actually with other organizations as well. And so we're building that out, or the FOI committee is really leading the charge on that. COVID has obviously made it more difficult. We would have really attempted to do this in DC last year at our convention. But because of COVID, there's obviously nobody's traveling anywhere for something like this. So it's more about trying to build the infrastructure so that when we're ready to pull it off, we can. But it could be a really cool program, especially for young students and journalists just starting out to understand, you know, what that could look like and how that operates. And then investigate a stronger and more active presence in DC, including a cost-benefit analysis. So part of our strategic plan is to have a DC-based advocacy program and team. So in this first quarter of 2021, how we are in regards to that is I've met with a few different individuals, including Mark Balin, who's our attorney at Baker Hostetler, who has a big, keen interest in this, but also a lot of good history in it. And he's excited about it, by the way. And then some others who are already doing this kind of work to see where we fit, what would we be doing that would be different than what other groups are doing, and to kind of understand then what would be our angle, and then that would tell us how we would do it so that our cost benefit analysis would make more sense. So the goal this year in 2021 is that analysis. So we're not, it could be that by the end of the year, we determine, you know, a whole different way forward, because it's just basically right now analyzing what the value of that kind of a program would be. So that's the Fighters for the First Amendment category. It's a lot faster, obviously, than the Champions, because we have a lot we're building out here. So any questions or thoughts people want to share about that?
I just quickly add that one of the things that John has done differently this year is created a past president's council that meets quarterly, is the idea. And that's been pretty amazing to see John do that. And one of the discussions he had with that group was about this issue. There's so much institutional knowledge about our past efforts to focus in on advocacy in DC, and, you know, how close we've come, what we've tried to do, what some barriers might be. And so props to you, John, for forming that group and for having that discussion.
Thanks, Matt. Any other questions or thoughts to add into this particular category? Okay. In that case, we can move forward to our third category, our third pillar, and talk about the annual plan associated with that. And that is the pillar of being stewards of ethical journalism. And so before we get into the various items on here, I have invited our Rod Hicks, who is our newest, our first and ever, I guess I should say, Director of Ethics and Diversity for SPJ. And Rod transitioned into that role thanks to a grant we got from Newmark Philanthropies, who believed in our ability to move the conversation forward on journalism ethics enough to the point that we could transition Rod's work into that space and also hopefully build out a really robust program on it. He's going to kind of give an update on his work. And then Danielle McLean, I don't think is available to attend today because of family issues as well. So we, Rod, you may have to be the lone show here today for this category, but I know you can handle it. But so Rod, take it away.
Okay, it's good seeing everybody. The thing that we want to do is create a place where we can have good discussions, debates about and just information about ethics and diversity. And this is going to include a lot of things. I will be writing stories. I have one that's going to be ready early next week off of the coverage of the murders down in Atlanta. But it'll also have stories that we get from other sources, at least links to that, and there'll be and this is all part of getting people to talk about ethics and talk about diversity and to keep it top of mind. But what we also will do is create forums where people can webinars, workshops, and maybe even a symposium that we've talked about focused on these issues. One of the things that's key to it is we're creating a web space where this debate and conversation can start. It'll be a place where the stories that I mentioned will be posted as well. The big thing that I'm doing right now is going through applications for an assistant that we're going to hire to help us out with this. We got 32 applications, and I expect to be interviewing people starting next week. So that's really it. I don't know if I've explained everything that we're going to be doing there, but it's a big focus on diversity and trying to get newsrooms and journalists in general to think more about it and to better understand the reasons behind diversity, and giving out good examples of ethical journalisms and maybe pointing out places where ethics was not front of mind. In addition to that, another part of it is the race and gender hotline that we have. And we are actually getting two to three questions per week on this, where people send us questions that they have about how to present something in a story dealing with race or gender. And actually, this week was probably the busiest at all. I think we got 5 or 6 questions this week. Most of the questions are about race, but a couple that we got this week were also about gender. But the assistant will play a big role in assisting with all of this. And in addition to those things, I'll do my normal writing, and I have some speaking engagements coming up. One in 3 weeks with the National Society of Newspaper Columnists. This was rescheduled from last year because of canceled because of COVID. The Indiana Collegiate Press Association, I will be speaking to them as well. And I will be a panelist at Northern Illinois University's Rebuilding Democracy lecture series. And that's going to be in either late April or early May. One of the sessions, going back to diversity, one of the sessions that we've talked about creating is perhaps, and this is with the News Leaders Association, something on retention. That's an issue that we've talked about that we might be collaborating on. I've been talking to different people in roles to get ideas about what the needs are out there. I've talked to the race and diversity editors at the Washington Post and Politico. I have some others coming up because we want to make this useful to newsrooms and useful to newsroom managers. And the people that I've spoken to have been helpful in pointing out areas that I think that we can develop some kind of programming around. So that's it for me.
Great, thank you, Rod.
Rod, I have a quick question. I missed when you said he had 32 applications. What was that for? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that part.
Okay, to carry out this ethics and diversity initiative, the grant that we got included money for an assistant, so that would be an assistant to help carry out the diversity and ethics efforts.
Okay, great. Other questions or things that you want Rod to weigh in on?
If no one else has a hand up, I'd just like to make a comment or a question, but I see Yvette has a hand up. Yvette.
Well, you could talk. I'll say it after you.
Okay.
I defer to you.
Okay. I'll just keep it brief. I just here for those who haven't seen it, here's the work that Rod did 2 years ago in Wyoming, the Casper project, which tackled many of these same issues. Super important work. And I remain appreciative of Rod for it. I recently, as part of my effort to meet with every pro chapter, I think I'm at like 35 or 36 now of the 50 plus. I met with Wyoming 2 years after this project, and they're still talking about it, and it's still changing how they do things in their newsroom, which was really reassuring to hear. So I appreciate that, Rod. So I just wanted to make that comment for those who aren't aware of kind of prior things that Rod has done. And I guess my question for you is also, this came up in a couple of the pro chapter chats that I've had, the issue of DEI training for newsrooms and what role SPJ might play in that. It's a really important question. I've talked about it a little with John. I just don't know. I wanted to bring it up with the group. You know, what role should and can SPJ serve in that capacity where we're trying to help newsrooms be better about having diverse workforces that understand these issues? It's kind of like the question Beiling had about our chapter leaders. What can we do for our members, for all our members in terms of that? And is that a role that SPJ can and should take on?
I think that it is a role that SPJ should take on. And I've been thinking about, like I mentioned, this session on retention. My thought about that is that would be for newsroom managers in particular. And I think that through our group that we can do some of those sessions. Now, there may be other forums that you want to do outside of this area, but I've been really thinking about that as part of what we do. And then it's not always, it would include bringing in people who are experts in this, who have done it before, maybe people from HR, people from newsroom. It's not just, me talking.
I love that. Thank you for that answer. I love the idea of bringing in managers, because it really needs to start at the top.
Right.
The realization that this is not just important, but essential. Yvette.
Yeah, thank you for that. To piggyback off of that question, my question was similar, like how will the D&I training be, and will you, with your new role and the training initiatives that are going to be moving forward, get to work with the Diversity and Inclusion Committee? I'm just wondering if you would play a role in having them be a part of the process in any way, shape, or form, and how can that committee help moving forward if they can, or is this just an initiative that's separate based on your role now as Director of Ethics and Diversity?
I think that, well, I would like to talk to the Diversity Inclusion Committee to see how we can coordinate things and work together and maybe share ideas. So I need to schedule a meeting with you guys to do that. But I think there are different ways that we can develop this. Karen and I have talked about developing educational sessions with her role as the educational director. And there are a lot of people on different committees, such as the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, the Ethics Committee, who might also want to have input in how we shape those. So I would like to hear voices from everyone.
Okay, that's great actually, because I think working together we can make this new role serve SPJ for the greater good moving forward in the long run. And I also agree to Matt's point, and well, no, you mentioned it, sorry, as to bringing in human resource experts into the mix so that we have people with other criteria that's a little bit more advanced than what we
Sure.
may have, as opposed to also newsroom managers, which are a great plus, but we need the expertise of those as well to shape how we want to make our initiatives. So thank you.
Sure.
Any other? Let me bring up, and while you're thinking, if you do have any other questions. So the 4 or 5 goals in our annual plan focused on this role are on the screen here. And the very first one speaks right to what Yvette was asking about. And it's something that we're still building out, but need to do that, is that, you know, creating programming in collaboration with the ethics and diversity, should be diversity inclusion committees, to highlight connections between ethics and diversity in the news industry. So it could be a very fruitful conversation for not only Rod to work with the diversity and inclusion committee, but maybe the ethics committee gets in there as well, and try to see how those things bridge together. So we're still building that out. Design and deliver new methods to teach ethics and ways to expand the use of the code of ethics. We're still building that out, but I would say that that's getting really cool and close, as far as Rod's got a great vision for a website that would be much very interactive, very creative, very you know, different way to look at how journalists engage with the issue of ethics and with each other around that issue. And it could be really, and he described some of it, it could be a really awesome offering to the journalism community. Produce a bolder ethics week. Still building that out. I would say we are looking at having Ethics Week later in the year than normally it would have been in April. And so we're looking at pushing it to later in the year, only because April is a very busy time and it competes for a lot of other things in that month, because we do have traditionally regional conferences that happen around that time. We have our board meeting, we have an anniversary of SPJ, which often is our day of giving. Plus we have, you know, we're in the thick of unveiling convention typically, and getting people recruited for that. So we think there's space in the year where this can take on a bigger time. So we're still building that out, and the ethics committee really leads that effort. One of the goals was to catalog existing and competing ethics tools to determine future opportunities for ethics programming. Rod's been doing that really well, and that's definitely on track. He is studying not only what we have produced over time in ethics, and there's a lot, but also seeing what other organizations have done in that regard, so that we can see where we play and aren't redundant, and definitely offer something new and different. And then the last goal was to investigate the creation of an ethics response team. And that's what we named Rod in his work, was an ethics response team. So really that's on track and almost to the checkered flag, because we got the grant, we got Rod here doing that work. We're going to have an assistant for Rod soon. And so as one of the biggest goals we've accomplished in all of our strategic plan that we described to you today, it's the fact that we were able to acquire that 6-figure grant to get this work started right off the bat. So we'd have a different story to tell today if we were still looking for those resources, but we have them, and we were able to make that happen. And I think that's exciting for the organization. So with that, I will, any feedback or thoughts around the points that are on the screen here, or anything else on ethics before we move on?
I have a couple more questions, but want to let other board members ask first if anyone has one. You got to be quick in this world, so I'm going to say my question is on Ethics Week. I know we postponed it last year and kind of scrambled quickly to pull together SPJ Truth Day, which was I think as successful as it could have been given the limited time we had to put that on. But so my question is, when are we eyeing for Ethics Week? Do we have a date? And I guess just a note of caution that we figure that out and promote it with a lot of lead time. So that's question one. You want to handle that one first?
Yeah, unless Rod has any updates, we need to push the committee to get that figured out soon. We don't have a date yet, as far as I'm aware. So. Okay.
And then my second question is, and then I see Claire, your hand up, so I'll turn to you next. But I read this week was so hard for so many journalists. It made me have two thoughts. One, and Rod mentioned it earlier, really proud that we have this race and gender hotline. Where the focus has been on the transgender and Black communities to start, but our goal was always to build that out. And it made me think, I mean, AAJA did some amazing, incredible work this week with, helping journalists know how to cover this story, what nuances to think of, even to last 2 days, having videos on how to pronounce the names of the people killed. Amazing. It gives me goosebumps just knowing that they thought to do that to help everyone. And so it made me think, like, 911 is not a number for people in South Dakota or for engineers or for women. It's for everyone. And so I wondered if we could work with the other journalism groups to make this race and gender hotline something that we really do get people with lived experience, so that it's members of AAJA
join the meeting
out, and members of NABJ and NAHJ and AAJA and NAJA, or whatever NAJA decides that its name should be. But it made me think that maybe there's an opportunity to reach out to these other groups and see if there's a way to expand that. So it's not just an SPJ joint, but it's really for everyone, populated by everyone. And so I don't know, maybe that's too ambitious, but I thought it might be a conversation to have. And this week, it really occurred to me why it's necessary. So that's my
Can I say something to that, Matt?
Please.
One of the things that we have been doing as we get questions to the hotline, we will refer them to, we have referred them to, this week, AAJA. There are questions about coverage of the story in Atlanta. And as part of the answer, we sent the link that AAJA had put on this website about, coverage. And I think we put them in touch with someone at AAJA if they had additional questions. So it's not as formal as you're suggesting, but we are already, as questions come up that deal with different ethnicities for which there are journalism organizations, we do reference them and send them to their websites, and sometimes send them to individuals.
Yeah, and so I think that speaks to, as we build out this program, we need to develop an awareness of where all those different resources are and what organizations are operating in that space, and then start to build those connections. But I think, Matt, your point's great that we, ultimately, and it's really, we'd love for this to be something that, transcends just an SPJ program. It's something that becomes a real standard in the industry. So
I think it's important to keep in mind early on, especially as you have that discussion. So I'm glad broadly that we're involving the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, which does this work from SPJ's perspective, and also these other organizations. So thanks for especially amplifying the AAJA messages this week. Claire, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick suggestion as the committee works on the calendar for Ethics Week, just to take into consideration college academic years calendars, so that I know I used even Truth Day. I worked that into my curriculum because I think it's got a lot of potential for college curriculum, and just to make sure it falls into the academic schedule. That's it. Thank you.
any other questions or feedback on this particular topic?
Yeah, I wanted to say something. First of all, Rod, I'm so glad you're in that position now. I'm so glad it was created. I also, while I look at the ethics response team, I think we need a diversity response team, because this week our committee, by the way, I'm the head of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. We immediately started seeing what AAJA was doing. And that's when I sent an email to the board and to John, like, are we going to put out a statement or what's going on? And then in the beginning is, yes, we're retweeting things, but we really needed to make a statement as an organization. And so in the end, it all, developed into a statement that came out that, that Matt and I were able to kind of edit together, because, it's about the language, it's about compassion, it's about sensitivity. And and a lot of times we run into this. I understand ethics, but I'm very aware that every morning I go see what NHJ, NABJ, AAJA, all these organizations are talking about, LGBTQ organizations of journalists, to see what they're talking about. Because it's so important. Yeah, we can retweet, but it's so important when we have our message out there, when we give our word. So, maybe that's something, Rod, I'm just gonna, and yes, I'm glad you're in that position, and I'm glad you want to talk to the committee, because we really need your help and we would love to collaborate with you. But I think we need a diversity kind of a response team, because, yeah, I'm keen to this all the time. I mean, I live and breathe this, you guys. And so, when this happened, when the murders happened, I knew that AAJA was going to, put something out there, because they're the leader in this area, because they know, I mean, the communities they serve, and also because of the journalists they have. But I also wanted to make sure that they knew that SPJ had their back. And so while I see retweeting and those kind of things are good because we show our support for AAJA, it is so essential today and crucial that we give them our support in a statement as the one that eventually came out. So it's something to think about, Rod. I like the ethics response team, but maybe we need a diversity response team too. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. And thank you to the Diversity Committee and you for the leadership on that day of getting, helping us get that statement crafted, so. Anything more on this? Okay, thank you for the feedback. We've noted it, and we will now move on to our final pillar, our category, which is, let me get back to juggling a lot of screens here, what we call Producers of Journalism's Future, which is a pretty exciting category by which we have decided when this category and this pillar and this identifying statement, it lives our college programs and our efforts towards young emerging journalists, as well as trying to stay on top of trends in journalism that will ensure its sustainability and its future going forward. So I want to call attention, I'm going to stop sharing because we've pulled together a few different committees to talk to us today, or a few different groups to kind of give us an update that fall within this category. The first is there's a campus task force that Matt assembled to take a look at how to make things easier for our campus chapters to form, as well as some other issues of where we would expand and grow to. I know Bei Ling and Jerry have been helpful in that. And so even though Jerry's name is on the agenda, we're going to ask Bei Ling to take that on and kind of update the group on what's going on with that task force.
Sure. Thanks, John. I'm happy to do that. Before I give the report, I just want to follow up to something Rebecca said. And thanks, Rebecca, for pointing out the importance of SPJ having our own statement and not just retweeting the AAJA statement. I think it's important that we did that for all the reasons that Rebecca said, but also I want to emphasize that, that the SPJ statement was important, not only in terms of the support it showed for our colleagues in AAJA, but the SPJ was important to show the support of our own AAPI members within SPJ, right? And so if as an organization, SPJ is serious about not only working with other journalism groups, but diversifying our own membership. I think, you know, keeping also in the back of our minds that when things happen, it's not just reaching out to journalists of color who are members of other journalism groups, but also journalists of color who are members of our own group. So just a reminder that we are diverse, and we'd like to be more so, and we can be, right? So to that long-term goal of being more diverse as an organization, I did agree to help Matt by chairing this year a task force on student chapter formation. So the task force started meeting in January or December, I can't remember now. We've met as a group, I think once or twice. We split up the larger task force into a sub-task force to come up with guidelines for chapter formation, and a sub-task force to come up with some campuses to target. So Jerry McCormick has been leading the conversations about which campuses to target. I've been leading the conversations about revising our guidelines. At one of the meetings, we also had some representation from regional directors, and their input was really helpful. So do you want me to share now kind of the overview of what those revised guidelines are so that we can get input from folks on the call?
Yeah, why don't you at a high level kind of share that stuff? That'd be great.
Yeah, okay, so let me share my screen. And so what you have is, if you've been on the SPJ website, you know that we as an organization have a bajillion things that college students are supposed to pull together in order to start an SPJ chapter. So over the course of 3 or maybe 4 different meetings, the task force and the sub-task force looked at those criteria. We talked them through. We got some input from Caroline Escobar, who is our staff liaison, about which of the criteria that we currently have been the most difficult for chapters to meet. And so based on all of that conversation and input, this is what we've come up with as proposed minimum requirements to start a college chapter. So what we're proposing is just, you know, in these 5 areas. First, the collegiate chapter has to be on a campus, right? Either a 4-year college campus or a 2-year college campus. That campus needs to offer either one course in journalism or some kind of student media outlet that gives news to the community. In terms of membership, right now we require 10 student members to form a chapter. And I think, as Matt pointed out in one of my conversations with him, a lot of pro chapters maybe don't even have 10 members. And so we really look to dial that number back. So the task force is proposing that we have 3 dues paid members to start a collegiate chapter. The 3 dues paid members would be basically your president, your vice president / secretary, and your treasurer. They have to pay dues to national. And if they want to add a bunch of additional student members to meet whatever their campus requirements may be to be recognized on campus, then that's up to the student group in question. But that SPJ we were proposing would only ask for 3 dues paid members. We do want to retain the role of the faculty advisor. This is important not only because campuses usually will require some kind of faculty involvement to form a student group, but also because we want to be sure that the student chapter is able to be connected to the industry and to working professionals who ideally would also be members of SPJ. So that's our suggestion for the advisor, that it be a faculty member who is teaching or working in the field of journalism and who is a dues paid member. The chapter does need to have bylaws, just like our pro chapters are expected to have bylaws. And then just some kind of notification to headquarters, right? We don't want 3 students getting together, calling themselves an SPJ chapter without letting somebody at headquarters know that that's their intention. So the notification could just be a simple email to SPJ headquarters to include the information previously discussed. So that's kind of the streamlined requirements that we're proposing. If you are familiar with the current requirements, you'll see that we took away the installation fee. We took away the requirement that there be an installation banquet. We took away the requirement that the students come up with a development plan for how they were going to grow. So just that's just kind of where we are. And then we're also pointing out that SPJ needs to put less onus on students and more onus on itself as an organization. So we would be advising that SPJ provide things like a template to craft a bylaw, you know, swearing in new executives, basic guidelines on how to run a chapter, etc. There are some things on the website right now about different kinds of student chapters, and we tabled those items for now. And that's the idea of having a city or area-wide campus chapter, as well as the idea of a satellite chapter. So we'll just kind of parking lot those for the moment. And I see that Rob is saying in the bylaws for SPJ, it's not a requirement that the collegiate chapter advisor be a faculty member. And so I guess that's something we can talk about if we want them to be a faculty member. I will say from the campus perspective, we're very keen to have student groups be advised by faculty members because faculty tend to be more stable in their positions, whereas students come and go. And so if we want the chapters to have a stable presence on campus, I think the university perspective would be that a faculty member be preferred. But I'm open to taking questions or other comments.
Any questions
Claire?
from board members? Claire?
Yeah, just kudos and thank you to the task force because I think the current rules exclude, you know, unintentionally exclude smaller colleges with smaller journalism programs that, you know, and especially here in New York City, there are a lot of dominant journalism programs and the other colleges get overlooked and can't really apply for membership. So I think this really opens up their ability to join. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Claire.
you.
Other comments? I would just echo that, Bailing. I knew when I asked if you would take this task on that you would handle it with the completeness and confidence that you have. And I just say at every meeting that I've met with pro chapters, their involvement with campus chapters comes up. And every time I've talked to campus groups now, and they say, it is so hard to start a chapter. In O&A, you need two people to talk about journalism in a single conversation and send someone an email. And I always knew that SPJ loves its rules and regulations too much to go that short. But this is so much shorter. And I think there are probably some discussions as Bob started here today where we can fine tune this, but this is an amazing start. And I really do appreciate the efforts by you and the task force. Thank you very much.
I wanted to say the same thing. Bailing, you and your team did a great job. And the beauty of this is that these are our future leaders. The only way we continue growing SPJ is if we nurture these students and really start embedding SPJ in their head. I mean, like, you know, the other organizations like NHJ, again, you know, I've been there with them since '86. I mean, I swear they're already starting in high school. And so, you know, I think it's so important, the job that you and your team have done, because we don't want it to be like, oh my God, how many forms, how many people do we have to get? I mean, they already have enough on their back as students, and so do the professors. So what you made is, and your team have created a simple path that in the end will help our organization thrive and survive. So thank you.
Yeah, I really have to say it was a great task force to work with, and Jerry's been a great co-pilot on that.
That's great. Any other questions by board members? Thank you, Bailing. Thanks again.
Great. Why don't we move next to an update from, because so much of this area focuses on student membership, we just kind of felt this was also a good spot to place a report from our membership committee, even though they look at membership all across the spectrum. So I know Emily's on the call, and I'd like to call on her to sort of give us a general overview of what the membership committee's been working on.
Sounds good. Thanks, John. So to John's point, we're really excited about our initiatives this year, which include a lot of extra focus on student membership. First of all, thanks to John, actually, we're finalizing details on a partnership with the Associated Collegiate Press, or ACP, on a special membership bundle. School media outlets with ACP memberships will have the opportunity to pay a flat fee, and that will get all the students a student level SPJ membership. So I think that's already just such a great step. And to the numbers that we've looked at, it's not a lot of overlap to existing student chapters. So it'll just be a great boost to new eyes on SPJ. What I'm really excited about is a program that our committee has been discussing that we think can piggyback or dovetail off of that ACP partnership. So we want to take an already established SPJ program, Paper Money, which is a semester log program that helps student media outlets improve their ad revenue with the help of professionals that we team the outlets up with. And I'm going to add a quick splash page for that program into the chat so you could see a better basic overview without me going too far into it. So that's in the chat now. But what our committee is hoping for is that with the board's approval, we can dovetail this ACP initiative with a membership perk program, which would be Paper Money. And to my understanding, that hasn't really been done before, where we have this membership exclusive for students. So we want to encourage student media outlets that if they sign up for the membership bundle, they'll be eligible to be selected as a Paper Money cohort participant. And the beauty of this program is that it doesn't cost too much. It can cost as much or as little as the board agrees to put into it. The main cost is for the trainer that we would partner the schools with, and that costs between $150 to $200 per school. So our hope is that once we figure out how many schools we're able to support in one semester, we can use this program as a hook to instill loyalty, and we can tout that those initial recipient success with testimonials into targeted messaging and promotions to help drive membership. And we can keep doing it semester over semester. So that is our big focus, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions from board members? That looks really cool, Emily.
Good, I'm glad. Yeah, we're really excited about it. We met just this week, so we were all pretty pumped.
Yeah, and the college partnership. I mean, I think the relationship we're building with these two collegiate journalism organizations, with membership and with the convention, can't be overstated how important that is and how sustaining that'll be for SPJ and the students over years. It's going to be transformative.
Other questions for Emily? Great. I had the pleasure of sitting with this group late in the year last year. Matt did as well, to do a retreat and to think through real strategically our membership efforts. And it's a great group that's going to be shepherding that effort throughout the course of the year. So great update so far. Let's talk now about so producers of journalism's future. Even though diversity, we said when we created the strategic plan, should permeate the entirety of the plan. You know, when you think about the future of journalism, it's definitely one of those things that needs to be prevalent as we talk about where journalism is going. So we've invited Rebecca to share an update on the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. So I'll ask her to do that now.
Thank you. Thank you, John. So I'm really excited about our committee. Just in case you don't know who our committee members are, Yvette Davila Richards is our vice chair. We have Adrian Brodus. We have Janet Cho, Dr. Tracy Everbach. She's the only professor on there. The rest are all working journalists. Daniela Ibarra, Ebony Harding Kendrick, Rebecca David, Xavier Higgs, and Adam Sennett. And a very diverse group, different levels of journalism. And lately, what our committee members have been are the go-to people for, different organizations have come to us to ask us for guidance when it concerns race, gender, even the disabled community. they want help in this area. They want guidance on, especially in newsrooms and outside of newsrooms, what terms do we use? What conversations do we start? I've had news managers approach me and ask me about, speaking to their newsrooms. And I think the beauty now that we have Rod is that, and I'm so glad he wants to collaborate with us, because I think we can really be a powerful arm for SPJ. And I'm so glad it's part of our pillars that John has put in our plan. Because once it's there, it says, we're serious about this. This is not just lip service, we're gonna make this happen. And so that's why I appreciate those two individuals. But we have something exciting, and it's going to be a social media campaign. One of the things that I've noticed from the SPJ diversity pages we have, from my own personal Twitter and Facebook, is that people love images or videos. And for example, I usually per month get at least 500,000 impressions on my Twitter alone. And so what I notice is with videos and images, people love to share those. They love to. So our committee got together and thought, you know what, we need to put something out there that can be shared on Twitter and Instagram. It can be shared on Facebook. And so we came up with a campaign called Words Matter. And John, do you have that we can show them what we have? So this is going to be a social media campaign. And here we have it. And we'll be posting important information like this that will inspire, empower, educate, not only journalists, but the public. I often today get, Rebecca, okay, is it Latinx? Is it Latinos? Is it Mexican Americans? Is it Chicanos? What do we call you? And so that is something that I thought, okay, let me put it out there. And this is my advice to everybody, from whether it is somebody at AT&T or another journalist. Ask the person, ask me, as I said down there. You can call me a Latina, Latinx, Mexican American, because the words matter. And so what we're going to do is, and this is where our members get involved, especially members of diverse backgrounds, race, gender, LGBTQ. We need your inspiration, your words of wisdom. We're journalists, we're storytellers. This is not only for us as journalists, but when this goes out on Twitter, LinkedIn, they're looking at it and go, oh, okay, a conversation to start. People can use this when they're having those little huddles in the newsroom. Well, here's what the Latinos are talking about. I mean, look at this is Rebecca. And it can be in any area. So this is why I say, especially on social media, the impact we make, look at the statement we made supporting our AAJA brothers and sisters. And look at this. So we're going to use a graphic. We're going to produce them. So we don't want to, headquarters already has enough work on their hands. This was easy for me to create. And so I've started with the committee first, and we're all going to reach out to different people, and feel free to email me if you want to say something. Of course, we don't want a big story. I mean, it's just a few quotes that you feel will empower, educate, engage people. Which is important. Once they start engaging with us, you guys, suddenly they're going, whoa, what's SPJ doing? What's the conversation? We offer something, we get something in return. And that means more eyes on our organization, which is important, especially as Beiling said, one of my goals as president-elect and the future president is to make this organization more diverse. And I appreciate that Matt has opened that door. So that's important. Again, these are just conversation starters that are important. And our hope is that SPJ, especially Jennifer, can help us expand this and get this out everywhere. We'll do the work when it comes to creating the graphics, and we just want to hand them over. And one thing that's important that we talked about podcasts, that's another thing that we talked about. Having a diversity and inclusion committee podcast to talk about, because podcasts are important. We tried the Zoom and have videos, but sometimes I think people are zoomed out. And so they want these little things that they can look up on their Twitter real quick pieces of information, real quick pieces of inspiration. And that's important. So that's pretty much it. One of the things I want to tell you, because sometimes I think that members think that our committee can solve race problems or discrimination problems or have all the answers. Just because I'm a Latina and just because I'm a woman, it doesn't mean I can solve everything that the Latino community needs, the Latino community is dealing with. I am here, I hope, as well as our committee, to offer guidance, to offer an avenue, to offer you a place where you can go and get more answers. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it. If you have any questions, feel free, or you can email me. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And inspiring is the word for that idea. I love it. Any questions on from the board?
I love our quiet board.
Actually, Rebecca, I did have one question on that, and that's, are you limiting this idea to diversity, or are we expanding that to journalism in general?
Yeah, pretty much diversity, you know, anything that concerns with, I mean, the conversations that people are having, like, you know, whether it's, you know, right now what the Asian community is dealing with, or the LGBTQ community, even people who, you know, with disabilities. I want to kind of focus. And I think there's conversations because, you know, I think other committees here and SPJ is doing a better, a great job of being able to cover other areas where journalists need answers. Does that make sense? Yes, no?
Yes, it does. Sorry, I was on mute because I have a tendency to get loud sometimes.
It's all right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Rebecca, for sharing. Thank you, Emily, for sharing. Thank you, Bei-Ling. So there's a lot going on in this pillar of our strategic plan. The 5 goals that were outlined in the annual plan are these. So the first is being achieved by Bei-Ling and Jerry and that task force. The second one was to establish 10 new college chapters, which is also, you know, being moved along by that task force, although that will require a lot more effort beyond that as well. I will say that as of today, we've had 3 new campus chapters formed already in 2021. So that's pretty good for us in any given year. And so it's really good so far. We wanted to realign the chapter advisor system to simplify requirements, incentivize engagement, and expand support. So Bei-Ling talked a little bit about that, the role of the advisor, and beyond who can or can't be an advisor, we know that those are some of the most important people in SPJ, because if you have a strong advisor, you will likely have a strong campus chapter. And so we need to find ways to incentivize that role and to make sure that it is something that the members who are occupying that role feel invested in and feel that they're significant for the organization. So still building that out, no big ideas on that just yet, but it's definitely something we're working on. We wanted to build a student advisory board that addresses needs of student members as well as new graduates, and pleased to report that we have that. We built a what we call the Student Trustee Council, 9 students from across the country, various age levels in terms of their college experience. Great diversity in that group from a variety of reasons and categories, and it just is going to be a really fun group to work with. We'll meet for the first time this coming week, and the role of that group is to take on questions, challenges, and issues that are facing our college members and potentially also young graduates who are entering the field, and to help us sharpen what we do for them and to make sure it's meeting those needs. So really excited about that. And then we want to develop a program to showcase and support new business models and financial sustainability for journalism. Building that out, that one probably could require a little bit more thinking through, but we want to definitely, you know, obviously it's important, so we want to do that. You could go a lot of directions with that, and so we need to figure out as a team where we're going in that regard. But so I no more to report on that particular one today. I did want to point out from the first category, we talked about the Champions for Journalists, the membership category that was there. So Emily gave a great report from the committee, and I said that we'd pull these off to this point in the meeting. We do have some membership goals that are pretty specific to membership. One was to create a new onboarding process for new members, and I'd like to work with the membership committee to get moving on that here soon. It's still in a building stage, but as Yvette Davila-Richards said earlier, it's important that we think about what we're giving our new members when they come into the fold. We wanted to automate monthly membership reports for chapters. We did that. So Impexium is able to provide that. And so we were able to do that and accomplish that goal. Wanted to identify the role of technology in advancing membership goals. I would say that's on track because of Impexium, and we're set to talk about that in just a few minutes. But there might be other things we're not thinking about in terms of technology and membership that we will discuss. And then lastly, we wanted to identify one metro area for a pilot networking driven model. What we meant there was where a chapter is not forming effectively or it doesn't seem to have energy, could we still have a way for SPJ members in that community to assemble together, even in a very casual, informal way? Because the more that they're able to build connections on a local level, the better it is for our organization. Not only could they eventually form a chapter, but potentially it gives us everything we need as far as ability to reach out in those communities and give them the connection that is the vital for our members to retain and stay involved. So, all right, that was a lot to give you in that category. Is there any questions or lingering thoughts regarding those goals within the Producers of Journalism's Future category? And I'll toggle back to here.
John, excuse me, John, I was just wondering, how many chapters, professional chapters do we have, and how many student chapters do we have currently?
Caroline's on the call. Do you have, can you pull that off the top of your head? Because I'm
off the top of my head, no. I'd have to go in and pull that report out, but I can certainly get on that.
Roughly, we have
it's 51 pro
Yes.
chapters.
It's between 49 and 51 pro chapters, and then we make up the rest of the bulk of the 179 total chapters I think that we have active. The rest of those remaining would be our campus chapters.
Yeah.
So more
ballpark.
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused.
So we have about 120 or so
Yes.
campus chapters and 50 or so pro chapters.
And they're all active?
Yeah, those are the active ones, yes.
Of the 51 that I've been trying to reach out to, I think about 5 or 6 I have yet to connect with. So there are definitely some pro chapters that are less active than others. And per what John and Caroline are saying, I haven't really been able to get a firm grasp on college chapters. As we discussed, those come and go. And so it's hard to get a firm number on that one. So that their number sounds as good as one as I've heard.
Thank you.
Claire.
John, yeah, I just want to say, express my support for the Student Advisory Board initiative. I think that's a great concept. And it could be implemented even at the chapter level at some point. Chapters could sort of imitate the concept. I know we're trying to do it at Deadline Club, and it gets young voices involved and grows potential members and board members of the chapter. So I think the concept is great. I'm glad you initiated it on the national level. Thank you for that.
Yeah, Matt really pushed for it. So I mean, it was really good that we have it though, because we can lose sight of what their needs are because we are all, you know, generally professionals, and that's where our perspective comes from. So it's great to have that perspective.
Any other thoughts before we move to the database, the last item on our agenda? Thanks for that overview, John. Back to you, and thanks for keeping us on time. This is pretty
This is
amazing with all the ground that we've covered today.
We're going to be a little bit late, but I just want to share one more thing before I hand it over to Caroline and Billy to talk. This is we just unveiled a new look for our website, and I invite you to go poke around on it, spj.org. The idea here was, again, we want to a person not familiar with SPJ who's just finding us, we want mission forward. We want to say, this is what we stand for and this is what we believe. The older version of the website, and the website's always been a very helpful and functional tool, but it went right into the what we do, and it didn't quite sell the message of why we do it. And so Billy did a really good job of designing a very attractive front page that pulls you in with a big image, big words, statements that get right at the core of what we're about. And then as you scroll down through the website, it goes right through to each of the 4 pillars. And when you go to each one of those pillars, so I'll just scroll through here. If you go to each of those pillars and you click on there, then it goes to a further delineation of how we're accomplishing that in all the various ways that SPJ handles each of those issues. It's really comprehensive. Please go take a look at it. I would say So one of the cool things Billy designed too, if it would reload here, is that you can, if you're an SPJer, you know, that you come to the website all the time, you can hide some of this intro stuff and it goes right back to the way the website was before. So you if your comfort level with that is you can find those things. So, but it's really it's a really cool concept that that we've developed. So please go look at it. And I think you'll really enjoy what you see. So with that, I want to ask Caroline and Billy to talk a little bit about, we wanted to have a very short conversation around where we are with our database migration, because it's such a big element of what we do as an organization, or how we're going to be able to do these things.
Thanks, John. So I'll be brief. I know we're pushing 2 o'clock here. I'll do a broad overview of where we started and where we are. So in case you weren't aware, we started this process roughly a year ago, right around this time. It was late March when we decided to create that relationship with Impexium. Starting in April, late April, was when we had our very first conversation around conversion and what that would look like. The internal process has been a long and arduous road, one that we are pretty proud of, that we have made it where we are. Starting in May, we have what we call discovery days. That's where we do hours of workbooking and questionnaires on an internal staff side, so that Impexium can understand exactly what is needed from the database that they will be creating for us. With that, we went into the summer months all the way into fall, where we did our very last final conversion in mid-November. November 24th was our actual go live date, and it was very successful. There were very minimal. We were actually very, very pleased at how seamless and streamlined everything seemed to be. Very few hiccups or hangups or glitches, which is the best you can expect for a data migration. Moving forward, we've done 2 what we call SSO token rounds. And so what we do is we send out the opportunity for members to create their user profile. Those have been very successful. The open rates have been very successful. We've had over 1,500 active users inside the database, updating their profiles, creating images, poking around, which is exactly what we wanted to do. We're not done yet, and I want to stress the importance of that. So John made a good analogy one day in a conversation. We bought a hotel and it was empty. And then we spent the better half of the last year building the inside of that hotel. And we opened the doors in November, but now we're still inviting guests in, and we're still learning about our new hotel, and we're still learning about the capabilities. And I really have to give credit to the majority of the staff. All of us have had to 100% relearn our jobs. So it has definitely been a long road, and we're not done yet. We've just now been live for roughly less than 4 months. And so we expect this next year to be lots of growth, lots of discovery. We're very, very excited. We're very pleased with where we are. And yeah, so that's pretty much the high level overview of where we are with the data migration and where we are now. And we are excited to see what this database can do for us moving forward. And I'm happy to take any questions that I can answer.
Anything, Billy, for you to add from your vantage point?
No, I mean, I would just add that, because Caroline can't say this, she makes it sound like it was smooth. And it was, I mean, relative to how we do these things, it was, because I've been involved in a few of these migrations. But it was an enormous amount of work. Getting that data off our old database, which was not a copy paste, right? It was not an import export. It was none of that stuff. It was kind of meticulous. So I would just say, when you run into issues, and there are still issues with this. It's new software. It is software that we didn't create, right? So we're compatible with them to a point, and then to a point we have to kind of get them to do things we need them to do, and then it doesn't just happen all by itself. So there are still glitches, there are still bugs, there are still things that are not there. Chapter reports weren't there on day one. They're there now, but they weren't there on day one, and there was some stuff that isn't there on whatever day it is today, right? So I would just say, like, when you hear how smooth it is, when you hear how easy it is, it was not that smooth, it was not that easy. And I'm not saying that because I did a hard job of it. I'm saying because Caroline did. And I just want to give her some credit in a meeting that is being recorded and posted on our website, that she did an enormous job with this migration.
Thank you, Billy. And he's right. It wasn't smooth on the internal side always, and it's still not. There are still things that are in progress. There are still things that are being worked on and sorted out. We expected that. We knew that there was going to be, a lot of hard grit work involved in this. And so, yes, I do understand that, that we've had great feedback, and when people have found an issue or something hasn't been working the way they thought it would, I always encourage that feedback. We will take it and do the best we can with the compatibility that we have with Impexium. But thank you, Billy. I appreciate that.
Beiling.
Beiling.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I was on the site and it was amazing, all the cool things that you can do and look up and input about yourself. My suggestion is that sometimes, life gets in the way and our best intentions to update our member profiles get put by the wayside because of work and life. So maybe send periodic reminders inviting members to check back. Like today's the first day of spring, so maybe spring cleaning as a theme to go in and clean out your old job title and input the new job you have or whatever, right? Maybe when members renew to check back. But just I think members need a little bit more prodding to go in and really be proactive, because otherwise we just forget.
And that's a fantastic idea. Thank you. Yeah, and that's absolutely something we can easily do with our leads, with our weekly newsletter. That's been a really resourceful tool, and I have to give credit to the communications team, because they have really been there when I need something in a second to push out those conversations and to push out those that feedback. So, but thank you. That's a wonderful piece of advice. I will definitely make sure we get that in the next leads.
Lauren.
I apologize for the noise in the background, and I'm wearing a mask because I've got some workers here at home, which is why I've been off screen most of the meeting. So apologies for that. First thing I want to say is amazing job with the website, Billy. I put it in chat, but I know that when people watch the video, they won't read the chat. So I want to be in this public meeting saying that you did a fantastic job, and thank you. A couple of things about the database real quick. I want to echo what Beiling said, because our members don't necessarily always pay attention. And I know that I've reached out to John about this. We need to remind them periodically so that they not only update what's in there, but they sign into the new database. And then the other thing I have is a question, which is about for chapter leaders and the regional coordinators. In the old system, if they wanted a list, they had the ability to go in and get things themselves. And I think right now they have to reach out and go to you, Caroline, to get it. Are we going to change it so that it can be more self-service?
So the chapter leaders actually have the ability to pull, as Billy had mentioned, the chapter leader reports are up and live on the website and accessible. As far as regional coordinator lists, those still have to come from me. We just have not found, Impexium has not found a compatible road to create that as something that would be accessible on the website or to our regional coordinator. So for the time being, those regional coordinator regional lists, those still have to come from me. But I am pretty on demand. You usually don't have to wait for me I can usually get them within an hour of being asked, if not instantaneously. So I try to make sure that I get those to you whenever they are needed by the regional coordinators, but all chapter leaders have the ability to access those lists.
That's great. And then there's one last question real quick. I know that in the past, board members were able to access membership lists. So I'm guessing we're in the same boat as the regional coordinators. We just reach out to you and then you would be able to pull them.
Absolutely. I will pull anything I can and put together anything I can for you.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Lauren, and staff, especially you, Caroline. Anyone else with a question? Rebecca.
Well, not really a question, just a comment. Billy, that website is kick-ass. It's beautiful. It really, really is. And I think it's important for everybody on this Zoom call to, on your platforms right now, take a screenshot put it out there, you know, great. We had come look at our website. And by the way, if you haven't joined us, now's the time. This is the perfect time to promote. I always think Twitter, LinkedIn, you know, I already have my little screenshot ready to go. This is where we, you know, my followers are not Matt's followers. We all have different people. So put it out there, give them a reason to come to our page. And I'm telling you, the other organizations, they're going to come over and say, okay, how kick-ass is it? You know, but again, that's where you bring them in and say, hey, and if you haven't joined us, you know, welcome to the family or whatever. But please put it out there. Put Billy's work out there. This is how we do it. This is how we attract people. Because, you know, if we don't mention it, they're not going to notice it. So that's just my advice to all of you on Zoom today. And thank you for taking the time on this Saturday to join us. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Very well said. It is a kick-ass website. Any other comments from board members? I guess I'll just close with some short comments here. I mean, I think I appreciate everyone taking the time, staff, board members, SPJ members, others on a Saturday to take a step back and not focus on a decision or a vote we needed to make, but on the strategic plan. I think I come away from this meeting, it's a tough week for me, for a lot of my friends who are having really, really tough weeks. And so it's good to be inspired and to see that SPJ is receptive to people's concerns, responsive to people's questions, revolutionary in what we're doing in many, many ways. And I leave here very heartened by that. We're doing a ton. We're doing a ton. We still have a lot to do, but I appreciate all the work by everyone on the board. And I just want to, in the interest of what Lauren said, that people aren't reading the chat, I want to thank every staff member by name here. So I have a list so I don't overlook any of the 14. Jennifer, Larry, Tony, Billy, Karen, Caroline, Linda, Lou, Rod, Zoe, Ashlyn, Nathan, Jake, and of course, John. What you guys have done in the last few months has been nothing short of remarkable, and I really, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Matt. And just to say something, you know, it's easy for staff to do its work when it has a board like this. So we appreciate your support and your help and your great ideas and vision. So onward and upward, it's a good time to be an SPJ member for sure.
Yeah. And Rebecca's point about promotion is always one to take to heart. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Raphael, second by Rebecca. All those in favor say aye.
Bye.
Aye. Have a good Saturday, everybody.
Motion is unanimous.
Take
Thank you
care,
all.
everyone.
Take
Enjoy
care.
your Saturday.
Talk soon.